Devin the Dream Haney is a rising star that splits opinion among many boxing fans. His dazzling boxing skills are clear to see for anyone, but people seem to criticise the fact he does not have enough power to dominate in the years to come. In this boxing style analysis today, I want to take a closer look at the incredible skills the Dream Haney possesses, while also looking at the areas of improvement required for him to grow further as a fighter and become one of the main faces of boxing.
Real quick, I just want to say a huge thank you to the sponsor of today's video, ExpressVPN. Now, if you're like me, being a huge boxing fan, it can be one of the hardest and frustrating things to watch boxing from different countries. Well, I think I've found the perfect solution for that, and that is through the sponsor of today's video, ExpressVPN. A VPN basically helps you connect your internet to a different country and also helps to keep your data and connection secure. A great example of me using ExpressVPN is that I can connect to a US based server and watch fights on things like ESPN+, which I can't get here in the UK. Or even better, instead of paying the pay-per-view price in the UK, I can connect to a server in another country and watch it that way at a much cheaper cost. This makes ExpressVPN my go-to way to watch boxing without having to find those dodgy streams going forward. If you use the link in the bio, you can get 3 extra months free, and there's also a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can try it out first and see if it works for you. On that note, let's get right back into the video.
Before turning pro, Haney's amateur career was pretty impressive overall, winning 7 national tournaments and finishing with an amateur record of 138 for 8. Out of those 8 losses, 2 are from his now and potential future opponent, Ryan Garcia, where the two fought 4 times, both having won twice. Instead of pursuing the Olympic dream, Haney and his father decided to turn pro at the very young age of 17. The American would have to fight in Mexico for his first 4 professional fights, due to the minimum age regulations in the US. From here, a young Haney would start to make his rise up the ranks, facing very unknown opponents. I guess you could call them tomato cans for the most part, but it helped work and develop his skill set further from the amateur days. In April 2019, Haney signed a co-promotional deal between his own company, Devin Haney Promotions, and with British promoter Eddie Hearn's Matchroom Boxing to fight exclusively on DAZN. And on the same year he signed with Matchroom, Haney became the youngest, latest born, world champion in boxing when he was elevated to the WBC lightweight champion, after the previous WBC lightweight champion at the time, Vasyl Lomachenko, was promoted to the franchise champion by the WBC. Good one, Mauricio. Despite this, Haney has started to face harder and former world champions including Gamboa, Linares and Jojo Diaz, all by the age of 23. He still has a long way to go in his boxing career, but it'll be interesting to see if his ambitions to be the face of boxing are a far-fetched dream, or if he can really reach the top. On that note, let's go into more detail of his style. When you watch Devin Haney, it is obvious he's a calculated outfighter, but with slick counterpunching skills and a good jab. He does have the ability to trade in the pocket, but you can tell he feels most comfortable by boxing on the outside, using his jab to punch and move and wait for the opportunity to counterpunch or set up an attack combination. The most obvious comparison we see a lot is with Floyd Mayweather's approach, by focusing on hitting and not getting hit. He's also used a very similar stance, his lower hand to help utilise the defensive movements and that tremendous up jab. He's even trained with Floyd Mayweather and also received some useful advice.
The key is to take less punishment. Keep a motherfucker on the outside as much as possible. Because remember, you got a lot of fighters, all they know is just fighting the inside. That's all they know is fighting the inside. You're going to be a versatile fighter where you can beat them in the inside and outside. Because some fights, you're going to have to fight a motherfucker inside. They're going to just close the gap when you period and make you fight. You don't have no choice. The less punishment you take, the longer you last in the sport. Because, you know, I was in this shit 21 years. So you're going to be okay because you got the skills. And at the end of the day, as you get older, the power going to come.
Another famous counterpunch I see elements of is Salvador Sanchez, but more in terms of maintaining the distance on the outside of his opponent, while I've also noticed him use Sanchez's favourite overhand right counter. Haney is a fighter that is always moving, never staying too long in front of his opponent, which makes him a very difficult opponent to get to and beat. Another aspect is his quick hands, and him being in his early 20s still, he certainly still has a good few years left utilising this speed to his advantage. The jab. The first point I want to make is the technique in how Haney throws his jab. Usually it's a quick up jab from a lower guard or Philly shell stance, which helps him to fire quick up jabs from a lowered angle. This is a useful punch, as an opponent with a higher guard may struggle to see it coming. He will also change the level of his lead hand from time to time to get a different angle or occupy the guard of his opponent. One of the main benefits Haney has, of course, is the slightly longer reach of 71 inches, especially for being a lightweight, where most of his opponents to date have had a shorter reach. He takes advantage of this by quickly whipping out his jab to create initial range. This also helps him identify how close his opponents are to him, and will quite often jab his opponent's guard to stop them from committing, and also just to set up his own right hand. Furthermore, it helps him set up the body jab, which is a favourite of his. He'll often throw a double jab to the guard and then the body. The final part about his jab I'd like to point out is more about his boxing IQ to adapt to southpaw opponents. Using a lowered lead guard or shoulder roll defence can be dangerous versus a southpaw, especially if you've not mastered it yet. One of the things I've noticed is Haney will instead change to a higher guard and start to fence or parry with their jab so they can't start to dominate him in this area. This is something very subtle, but it shows he's aware of the advantage his opponents can use, so he can immediately change his approach with his lead hand to stop them. I also like that generally he always varies up that lead hand using feints, and he even uses a lead left hook from time to time to keep his opponents unsure about what will come next. Transitioning attack combos. This is probably one of Haney's strongest outputs, and that is of course transitioning his attack combinations. When I say transition, I mean the ability to mix up the location of his attack combos, not just head to body or vice versa, but also find different openings from around the guard. You will often see a lot of fighters in the mitts doing these ridiculous combinations on the pads, and when it comes to fight night they will freeze up and not throw anything like they were in their training clips. Haney on the other hand is one of the best up and coming combination punchers in my opinion. When he's in the pocket, he has the ability to pull off these quick combinations, but his defensive elusiveness helps him to have the confidence to pull these shots off. Counterpunching. Now in terms of the counterpunching, one of the main tools he uses is that counter right hand. It also helps Haney's right hand positioning is always locked and loaded for that counter. Haney will also look to set this up in a few ways, including timing his opponent's jab to slip before countering with an overhand right, or even mixing up by throwing an angled uppercut. He'll also simply take a half step back before countering back with it, and then finally the most common one you'll see him do is that shoulder roll counter where he rolls the right hand or jab before return firing with his own right. Defense and footwork. One of the primary reasons why Haney is so successful as an outboxer is his defensive skill set. He's able to shoulder roll, use waist movement, roll hooks, and slip punches. But the primary method for me is just the subtle footwork when he's on the back foot. He's very capable of using his jab with linear foot movement when taking those small half steps back, and it makes him very difficult to get to as he's always using his lead hand or feinting to create that caution. In a way, it reminds me of Andre Ward and how he used his own jab. When he's in the pocket, Haney is very good while using the shell stance. It's more his ability to use waist movement to dodge the punches, and also move with footwork when he does a defensive manoeuvre. Areas to improve. As much as being an outfighter and using your boxing skills can win fights, I believe Haney does need to handle himself better in the pocket. We've seen Haney have much success when actually pushing the fight at times, especially at one point against a top opponent versus Linares, where he was able to push him back. For me, this actually made me realise that Haney can really handle himself in that situation. Instead of continuing to push this approach, Haney resorted back to his outfighter style, allowing a tired and hurt Linares to get his breath back and come back into the fight. I'm in no way saying Haney should turn into some sort of pressure fighter, but I do think his inside fighting needs to be improved on. as even someone like Floyd knew he would have to fight in the pocket or inside at times. I feel this is definitely required, especially after watching that Linares fight, where we saw Haney get buzzed a couple of times. However, Linares is a top opponent who's always had very good powerful hooks. As a way to counteract this, Devin Haney has gotten away with some very good clenching to stop opponents from continuing their attacks. It's very smart from his end, but as the opposition steps up, I believe this is an area he'll need to improve on. Final thoughts. Overall, I really like Haney as a boxer, and I do believe he can continue to improve in these specific areas over the years and refine his style to perfection. There's obviously the question around his power, but if you participate in boxing, you will know that having respectable power can be enough to take you a long way, but it requires everything else to be spot on. My biggest concern is obviously when he faces bigger, tougher opponents with power and a similar skill set. Will his outfighter and counterpunching skills really be enough to win? Time will tell when that comes. And that wraps up this boxing style analysis. I'd love to know your thoughts on the Dream Haney. Do you think he can continue improving and eventually become the face of boxing? Comment below and let me know. As always guys, make sure to hit that like button, really helps out the channel. If you're new here, please subscribe. Recently hit 20,000k and I'm just really grateful for all the support so far. As always guys, thanks so much for watching and I'll see you in the next one.